Welcome to Alpha Bets, a weekly conversation where we go over interesting companies and pick apart their growth drivers and reasons for possible failure. I'm Nathan Warden, your host. I'm today joined by Ross Klein, the CIO of ChangeBridge Capital, and our resident stock detective, Pat Connolly. Today, we're really excited to talk about Vimeo. Vimeo pivoted away from video for consumer towards video for enterprises. Why did they do that? And was it the right move?
I think it's more of like a picks and shovels decision instead of trying to compete against YouTube, which is not going to happen. YouTube's not going to be dethroned.
Oh, it's a no-brainer. I mean, they've got the addressable market. They've got users embedded. Now they just need to upsell them. If you're an enterprise user with Vimeo, you control the content, you control where it's seen, you're direct to consumer, and you're not worried about what kind of ads are showing up in the middle of your video.
What percentage of current users can Vimeo turn into paid subscribers?
So right now, less than 1% of their 200 million users are paying subscribers. They can get to 10 million paying subscribers if they get to less than 5% of it. So they can just penetrate that existing user base more, then yeah, it's a lot of growth to be had.
Ross, what percentage do you think of current users can be turned into paid subscribers?
It's hard to know, but they do give us data saying that 70% of existing paid users were once free. So they do a pretty good job of converting, but it's law of large numbers, right? You've got how many 100 million free subs, you're going to convert some of them. What's nice about that though is the sales and marketing expense is already largely there, right? So it's scalable revenue.
So we like this enterprise pivot, but how will Vimeo achieve enterprise growth?
So for a lot of their existing subscribers, they want to change how they're billing them. They want to start charging them per seat. And they're kind of hoping there's like almost like a network effect inside organizations.
Ross, does this change in billing strike you as an effective strategy?
I hope so. It's what everyone else does. So it makes a lot of sense for them to make that conversion. It probably makes the sales process simpler because they're speaking in languages that their customers probably understand better. There could be some turbulence in this process. Keep an eye out for that.
If everyone else is doing it that way, how come they weren't already billing in that way?
It's a new business. You know, it's a 15-year-old company, but like this business model for them is 3 years old. You know, the CEO has been there for 4 years, I think, and she seems fantastic, by the way. And so while we treat them like a large embedded existing business, they really are still kind of startup phase.
Any other ways that enterprise growth is going to take off?
Yeah, new products, new features. So they just announced a webinar feature a couple months ago. As more and more people attend webinars, Vimeo can take a bigger and bigger cut of it. So they really charge based on how many people view the webinar. You start doing webinars of 100 people, they take their cut, but if it grows to 1,000, their cut grows larger. So that's a great way for them to track the growth of their existing customers.
So there's this example with Dropbox where they had tons of trouble monetizing unpaid subscribers, and Vimeo is a similar situation, possibly. Can Vimeo monetize unpaid subscribers?
I think so. Dropbox, there's a big difference, and it's a great question. But Dropbox is competing with free, and not just free with ads, but free, right? Vimeo is not competing with that. So I think there's a real opportunity. They are already proving that they're able to. You know, enterprise growth has been 60+% for the last year and last quarter. If you are a large enterprise and you want to put content out, and you also have access to social media, you can replicate the value of YouTube, but with all the control of Vimeo. And so that concept, I think, will resonate.
Can Vimeo monetize unpaid subscribers? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like if someone's using the tool, eventually they'll come across a feature they want and they'll get worn down and they'll pay. It's kind of like you're on Spotify, you listen to ads, then one day there's something behind a paywall and you're just going to pay. Like if you're on it long enough, you're going to get worn down, you get converted.
It's also free advertising. There is some network effect, right? Like the only ad you see when you're using or watching a Vimeo video is the Vimeo logo in the corner of the screen. That costs Vimeo nothing, and it's not obtrusive to the content creator either.
So I'm feeling like we're starting to like this. I bet other people like it too, other companies. Is Vimeo an acquisition target, perhaps by Adobe or Zoom?
I mean, you would kind of think they would like to acquire it, but Adobe just made a pretty big acquisition a couple months ago in a similar company. So maybe Adobe's out, Zoom, perhaps, maybe someone else.
Ross, any thoughts on acquisitions? Does this even matter when we're investing? Should we even be thinking about, could they get acquired? What does that mean for investors?
It's always relevant. I don't have any insight into whether they'll get acquired, but the stock does trade at a discounted multiple to some of their perceived peers, you know, and so that gives you some solace. But, you know, having takeout valuations, I'd prefer to use that as sort of, if I'm buying something that is trading at a meaningful discount to take out valuations, then I feel like I have some margin of safety. It's not enough to say I feel like we're safe.
Who can Vimeo make the strongest sales pitch to?
I think creators like influencers, they have a really powerful tool where you can do a live stream on Vimeo and broadcast across all social medias at the same time. So you could be eating a chicken sandwich here and show it to TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all at the same time. I think that's a really powerful tool if you want to have extended reach, which every influencer, every creator does.
What are Vimeo's sneaky assets?
They have a couple of sneaky assets. So they have one thing that's kind of like Shutterstock and Get images, where you can upload your images and sell them on a marketplace where people can buy them. And then they kind of have a Fiverr Upwork type thing where you can be a video creator, a video editor, and people can find you and you can publish your work. So it's kind of like maybe those platforms, like there's a niche that gets picked off and Vimeo owns the video category.
Data, 1 trillion clicks last year. They have access to a lot of data.
What do you think investors are anticipating they might do with that?
Nothing. It's not something they talk about. It's not something they preach. It's not something that comes up in conference calls, but it's there.
You noticed that the data that Vimeo has is not being talked about as an asset.
They mention it in their initial filing, but doesn't come up in conference calls, doesn't come up in quarterly calls. It's still early, it's a new company. They still have to explain what they are and what they're doing, but it's not an asset that they spend a whole lot of time talking about. And it makes sense for now because the idea isn't to monetize that until you've grown to a level that you feel is a market share you think you should get to. That's not something that your end customer necessarily wants to hear, like, oh yeah, we're going to monetize your data. It makes sense. If you were Vimeo, you would try to grow as fast as possible, establish market share, build out that network effect that does exist, and then monetize in another way later.
Possibly something that the market is missing, the data that Vimeo is collecting. And there's certain good reasons why they're not being super out in front about why that's such a good thing for them, but it really could be in the future. All right. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of the enterprise versus a self-serve model?
The strength is that their sales funnel is these app marketplaces. So HubSpot, GoDaddy, all these places that people need tools. The Vimeo app is in most of them. They have a really strong funnel for acquiring new users who might be unpaid today, but become paid tomorrow. But then like some of their features like video recording, like that's really not that strong of a sell if you're already subscribing to Zoom or to Teams. Even the webinar thing, there's a lot of competitors out there. I think it's really focused on people who need tools to do stuff instead of just facilitating video. It's actually a top 100 app on the Apple iPhone store. The website's almost a top 100 website in the United States. It's a household name. If you grew up on the internet the past decade, you know what Vimeo is. Like you're familiar with what it does as a video hosting thing. So now it just makes sense that people have grown up, they're in jobs, looking for video tools. They see the video name, they trust it, they try it, eventually subscribe.
Does an investment in Vimeo depend on a thesis of flipping YouTube's prominence?
I think it depends on recognizing that won't happen. That Vimeo is no longer trying to compete on the ad-based market and they're trying to do their own thing, but they provide tools to people who want to control their videos, have better functionality with their videos.
Are there some useful ways to look at YouTube versus Vimeo? Is it even a versus?
I don't think it's a versus. Yes, they are offering something similar, but they're putting it in very, very different wrappers. I don't think it's a great comp. We also don't have valuation for YouTube. So we couldn't use it as a comp from a valuation perspective either. So no, I don't think it's a head-to-head. The company doesn't describe it as a head-to-head. There are so many other places that your time is going besides just YouTube that I wouldn't necessarily consider that as the direct comp to Vimeo.
Why are current Vimeo bag holders in a max pain situation?
I don't know if they're at max pain. When a company gets spun out, a lot of the time, the new shareholders who are really existing shareholders, they see something new in their portfolio and they say, maybe I didn't really want to own this. Or maybe I owned IAC and the spinoff was a catalyst for me to own IAC. Well, that catalyst is now gone, right? So why would I continue to own it? The timing was unfortunate. Having a new public small cap growth security in May of 2021 was unfortunate. Small cap has lagged badly. Growth has done poorly. The combination of the two has been even worse. Recent listings have been terrible. It fits a lot of those characteristics. And at the same time, the first quarter that they reported, so-so. There was an air pocket post-COVID, and you take the combination of a down stock, shareholders who don't know it well, and slightly missed expectations in this tape. Look out below.
So the max pain scenario is essentially that the stock has only gone down since it went public. And so every single person who has bought Vimeo has lost money. Why will this turn around?
If they operate and shareholders are no longer in tax loss selling mode, which does change at the end of the year, a few of the reasons that you might be a seller now go away. The stock gets cheaper as they operate, as revenue goes up, as earnings go up, as margins go up, and the valuation stays the same or gets lower. There are people who are going to come and take a look and say, this is actually quite interesting. Insiders aren't selling. Why don't I take a look? Because now I have a chance to potentially buy, what looks like a high quality business that's recurring and high margin at a potentially reasonable valuation. But I can't subscribe to we've hit max pain yet.
All right, prediction time. In the next year, what do you predict will be the most important part of the Vimeo story?
I would like to see influencers become a big thing. Enterprise will continue to grow. Enterprise continue to grow is like what they want you to know. I think from like small time investors, they want to see influencers maybe. They say they want to grow 30% every year. They said they're not going to do it in 2022. So yeah, just something between less than 30%. Over 30% is a surprise.
Ross, any predictions for Vimeo in 2022?
The company has stated that they're in a bit of an air pocket right now. Growth's going to decelerate in the first half of 22 and then reaccelerate in 23. These are their words. The thing that I would spend most time looking for is enterprise growth and what percent of those customers converted from free, just to make sure that funnel is still working.
Thanks so much for tuning into Alpha Bets. It's been super fun talking about Vimeo. We'll go and track this and revisit in the new year at some point. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns or complaints, or you think that we're totally off, we love hearing that. So let us know in the comments below, and we will keep hashing out Vimeo.